Здравствуйте, товарищи. And I want to talk about something that I've noticed, well, I just noticed especially recently. And, you know what, I'll just go straight into it instead of kind of juking and jiving around the point for a little bit. Basically, on my other channel, I posted my video asking about whether people think aliens exist or not. And, on a side note, people kept asking why I didn't post it on this channel, because on Stalin's Coffee House I kind of want it to be human-related quandaries. I don't want to be chasing aliens here, so to speak. Anyway, and in that video I said that I believed that aliens would be roughly the same technological level as us because the whole universe has had the same amount of time to evolve and expand and grow and so on and so forth. And people freaked out at me, and a lot of people are like, what about the Dark Ages? What about the Dark Ages? And I'm thinking, what about the Dark Ages? And this, to me, kind of represents something that I call historical boxing. It's where you box yourself into one segment of time or one area of history and don't look out at the whole world and how the whole rest of the world connects with the other parts of history. And that's kind of like a problem I've seen with newer academic historians. They all become really, proficient and knowledgeable experts in one particular little aspect. Like they become, I know more about, I don't know, the War of 1812 or the American Revolutionary War than anybody else before me or anybody else, on the face of the planet. But that limits you from looking at the outside causes and the outside aspects of history, and how all these other events may connect to each other and lead up to a series of events that could have created the American Revolutionary War, or might happen because of it, and so on and so forth. And the older kind of historians gave more insight, I guess. They kind of gave more insight to how things ended up the way they did and where things might go on in the future. And today, a lot of more modern historians like to discard the older historians because they're biased, they look at the time frame that they live in, and so on and so forth. But at least they were able to look at history holistically, rather than in this little box. So that brings me back to the Dark Ages, where everyone was freaking out. Europe wasn't evolving in the Dark Ages. Europe's not the whole world, ladies and gentlemen. The whole world doesn't center around what Europe does and what happens in Europe, and all of history doesn't center around what happened in Europe. While the Dark Ages were happening in Europe, the Arab world was going through an unfounded gold age. They were more prosperous than they ever had been in the past. Well, maybe not that they ever been in the past, because the Persian Empire was pretty prosperous, but they were going through another gold age. During that time, they were getting wealthy, making technological advances, discovering new ideas, so on and so forth. So the Arabs were having this gold age, Europe is having the Dark Age. And just because Europe isn't evolving, like I said, doesn't mean the rest of the world wasn't evolving technologically and wasn't evolving at all. And of course, there's the other ancient civilizations like China and India that are always they're always there. They're always going through advances. I don't know if India or China necessarily had their own Dark Ages. I don't know enough about Chinese or Indian history to say that they had their own. I'm sure they had their own periods of when they would fall down and then come back up and have their golden age and so on and so forth, just as everywhere else in the world did. But I was just a little upset that people were just so focused on European history and what happened in Europe, and they didn't even look at all these other elements, and they didn't look at all the rest of the world's history, and they didn't seem to know that while the Dark Ages, quote unquote, I don't like that name at all. I don't think that they were that, dark. I mean, if the only European empire that you really have to compare yourself to is the Roman Empire, yeah, just about any period in time, is going to look dark. And you compare just about every empire is going to suck when they compare themselves to the Roman Empire. And like I said, I hate that name. I think it's a little bit of, a misnomer because it wasn't super, dark. Like, there wasn't, like, nothing going on or something like that. I think that in the Dark Ages, things became a lot more localized, whereas they kind of, focused inward on their farms and their fiefs and so on and so forth, instead of, whereas I want to say that the Roman Empire was much more centralized than the kind of fiefdoms and the feudal system that kind of emerged during the Dark Ages. So there was kind of a transition there from a more centralized Roman kind of government to a little bit more localized and spread out fiefdoms and farms and so on and so forth, and little lords ruling over their plot of land, loosely tied together by a king. And I don't know, I just want to encourage you guys that Europe isn't everything historically. Europe isn't where the whole world hinges around for the entirety of the world history. There, of course, have been times when basically the events of world history have hinged around Europe, but not for all times. In fact, after the Roman Empire, I don't think Europe was really important in world events until, I want to say, when kind of Magellan discovered the Isle de Molucca and kind of found the Spice Islands, and then they were able to take all the gold that they got from finding these spices, and it kind of injected steroids back into Western European economy, and then that kind of really rocketed them back up into power. Speaking on a sort of a world stage kind of level here. But I guess it's going to be my first historical kind of discussion, and in this discussion, I just want to encourage you guys, because I know there's lots and lots of fans of history on this channel, on both my channels. I just want to encourage you guys, don't box yourself into one particular aspect of history or one particular section of the world. If you really want to know as much as you can about history, and you really want to flourish and extend your historical knowledge and be able to use that historical knowledge to connect to other things that happened in the past and know what might happen in the future, then you really need to expand yourself and look at connections between the world as a whole, and not just little tiny segments of time or little tiny segments of land. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed that. It's going to be Joseph, he's one of the Stalin, signing off for now, and I'll see you guys later.